We had one good advantage in that Russell Crowe had worked with Greg Canham, the makeup artist, key makeup artist, on The Insider. I had also worked with Greg Canham on Cocoon, and so I had a good rapport. But really the key here was that Russell and Greg were able to just keep trying, go back in the trailer, keep looking at pictures of Nash, and keep working on it. The other thing is that while there's very little to go on in terms of who young Nash really was, what he sounded like, how he moved, any of those things that would have keyed Russell Crowe's performance, he actually did have a chance to see what the elder John Nash was like. And it gave Russell a real handle in terms of actually really creating a total character. So, you know, they weren't just making an old man makeup that would sort of fit Russell's face. They were actually working toward a character.
The first thing we do is break the script down and how many stages of makeup for each person. And then we go through each character and figure out exactly how many years span and how much are we cheating it. Because 5 years pass, but then we, you know, well, you're not going to see much really makeup-wise. Maybe we should cheat a little more. So we had to, you know, figure out the points where he did really see a difference in ages. The one thing I'm really happy about in this film is the flow of the makeup. Usually you see, you know, people jump from young to old, back and forth, whatever, but this film I thought just flowed beautifully with him young, going through to where you don't notice the makeup too much. Towards the end of the film, it just kind of flows and you actually see him aging gradually. And we tried really to do subtle changes, you know. In the beginning it was more like, well, we'll go with making Russell look more like Russell. But then as we went along, Russell said, well, you know, let's make him look a little more like Nash. So I went a lot heavier with the character makeup, like the eye bags. I never would do eye bags this big on somebody. But I knew for this film and the character and everything, I thought they would work. We basically started with him young. We did a youth makeup on him and made him look as young as we could. Neil Martz did most of that. And then at the point when he goes into the hospital, I took over his makeup. And I then started using actually aged. They wanted him physically aged 5 to 10 years at that point when he gets the shock therapy and that. So at that point, I started using stipple on the corner of the eyes to get the crease to come down, and highlight and shadow, and actually started, you know, the dark around the eyes for that look, and really tried at that point aging him about 10 years subtly. And then from that we went on to where I started adding in a little tiny neck piece, silicone neck piece, and then we started with a bigger neck piece and tiny appliances in here, silicone appliances, and then old age stipple more and more, which wrinkles the skin up to age in the forehead. Real subtle, and then just adding more, and then the pieces got bigger as he aged. Till the end of the film, he's got a full neck on and cheek appliances and a bald pate with a wig on to recede his hairline. And it was just so much. I did 9 stages of makeup on Russell. And luckily, they shot it in chronology pretty much, so we were able to, luckily, do it that way. But there were some days when we had to go back and forth, just trying to keep track of it and how his beard, sometimes he had beard growth, sometimes he didn't. There were like 6 levels of beard growth, 1 day growth up to 6 days growth. We had to keep track of that. The other thing in the film, which was really hard to deal with, were the teeth, because he wore fake teeth all through the film to give him an overbite.
Without teeth?
With teeth. This film, Wes Wofford and myself developed this silicone. I decided I want to create a silicone that's like foam, where you can put it on in overlapping appliances, which works better. When you have a whole face piece and try to glue it down, it takes like 7-8 hours, and it's like trying to put Jell-O on someone's face, and you get air bubbles in it, and it's just a nightmare. But I wanted to do overlapping silicone appliances, and also appliances that I can use any makeup on. So we could make it up in the same amount of time as foam, but the movement is amazing. This is Russell's cheek. This went on this side of the face and blended onto a neck. This is silicone we've developed. It's an incredibly soft, very floppy, very fleshy piece, and it has great movement in it. And it wrinkles very natural. It gets little tiny wrinkles in it and everything. Very thin edges. When you glue this down on his face, the edges blend into his skin, and then we cover it with makeup and different colors and break it up and everything. When we take it off, it's destroyed. The piece doesn't work anymore. The edges are destroyed, so we have to throw it away. We have to make one of these each day of shooting on a film. And this is Russell's old age neck right here. We do a big full wraparound piece. The cheek piece would like fit over then. That's why I was talking about overlapping pieces. So we put this on first, and then this glues onto his cheek, and then would glue down onto his neck. Get rid of the edges, and you can see how just incredibly mushy this stuff is. So the movement in it is just amazing how well it would move. He could even stretch his neck up, and it stretches like real skin. It took about 4 hours to get Russell into this every day. You know, you have to glue it on one piece at a time, and then color it, and the bald pate, and then the hair goes on, and the old age spots, you know, and it's, you know, people just have no idea how involved this stuff is. But it's just, you know, to make one of these appliances and then you throw it away every day. I was real happy at the end of the film when you see Russell doing his speech, and you can see his neck moving, and you can see him swallowing, and you see the movement, and he's turning sideways, you know, and it's all moving, and it, to me, you know, I've never seen anything that real. It's pretty amazing, but it is fun. You know, it is definitely fun, especially when you see it on the screen. You really feel like you've really accomplished something, and you know, that's when it's exciting, you know, to see it on the screen. So
We had done a couple of films with Digital Domain, really ambitious ones, Apollo 13 and The Grinch. And there's not a lot of visual effects in this, but in working on both films, I got to know an effects designer named Kevin Mack, who's a really brilliant guy and knows a lot about math and science. And so much of this was trying to understand and express visually the workings of the mind, and not so much the madness, but more the creativity, and trying to organize these abstract sort of thoughts. And I really thought Kevin would do a great job, and he was really helpful.
We get involved very early, even before there's a finished script. So for instance, on A Beautiful Mind, before the script was finished, Ron and I started brainstorming ideas for how to show Nash's way of thinking, show how he sees patterns and so on. So several of the ideas for shots in the film, the tie and the patterns, lifting patterns and so on, were conceived at that time and then written into the script. And then once the script is finished, then I go through and break it down and pick out shots that seem like they might be effects, and we talk about whether they want to try to get that practically or if that's definitely an effect shot. And also, it's an evolving process, so several of the shots that are in the film weren't even considered shots until later on, until they shot it and found, well, we didn't know about the fact that we can't put a baby in a bathtub with the water up to its nose, so some of the shots were actually added after the fact. So here's the element of the baby shot in the dry tub. Here's the lighting pass for the caustic light effects. And then here's the refraction element of the baby. This is the lighting and refraction combined. And then the mask for the face and knees. And a little waterline element. And then this is the element of the water in the tub, which had to be reconciled. And the really tricky part on that shot is that the shot of the water and the shot of the baby in the tub, you know, it's a moving camera shot, and it was shot handheld. So the moves didn't exactly match. And so Klaus Henke, the compositing supervisor, had to reconcile those two elements and slow it down and speed up the different elements to get the two tubs to register. Here you see the various elements wiping on, the lighting and the water, and then the refraction and various waterline elements, the final shot. So here's a shot of the baby where we just simply remove the hands. can never get a gratuitous effects shot by Ron Howard. He just has no interest in that. But if you come up with a shot that enhances the telling of the story, clarifies it in some way, then he's all for it. I came up with this idea of having the text come forward, but also that whenever he has one of his epiphanies, that there's a little flash, there's a little ramp up in the exposure. So for instance, in the bar scene when he sees the girl, there's just a little ramp of flashing, and when he's looking at the text and so on, it pulses it, a little bit of flashing right as the text comes forward. We found that to be the most effective because it felt very cinematic. It felt like something that could be photographed. This is for the dating strategy sequence. We shot all of these elements on blue screen so that we could fade them in and out as necessary and create the sort of diagrammatic explanation of Nash's theory with the dating metaphor. We had a clean plate we shot of the bar, and then here you see the combined elements fading in and out. Tracking technology at Digital Domain has really become quite advanced, and so it frees up the director to shoot any kind of move he wants, and we can track it after the fact and place computer-generated elements in. For instance, there's a shot with pigeons, the little girl running through a field of pigeons, and the pigeons don't fly away because she's not real. They, of course, couldn't get real pigeons to hold still as she runs through them, so we created three-dimensional models of pigeons and texture mapped and lit them and so on, and animated them to behave like pigeons, and then placed them in the scene. And again, they're tracked in because the camera is moving, so we duplicate the camera move in the computer in 3 dimensions. Here you see the shot of the little girl running through the empty park there. And then here's a shot where we just placed stand-in 3D pigeons, computer-generated pigeons. And then here's the rendered element of the pigeons, just quick shaded. Here it is comped in with the shot, and then in the final shot with the texturing and lighting. I don't think anybody would ever notice that those were computer-generated pigeons. There's a shot when we pull back from Nash in his window working on his theories. It was shot on stage with just a set of the window piece, and it was shot just on a dolly. Well, we took that shot and we scanned it, and then we tracked the camera move in 3D. So then we were able to create a matte painting of the rest of the building, as well as 3D snow elements. And then also we were able to take the tracked camera motion and apply it to a motion control camera rig, and we were able to add the foreground tree elements that then grow the leaves. And so you need a pass without leaves and a pass with leaves, and it needs to be repeatable so that it doesn't jump. Here's the shot of Nash working on his theory, and we pull back, revealing that this is really just a set piece. We tracked this dolly move, which was shot on set. We scanned the film and then tracked the motion of the camera in the computer so that we could then apply it to a motion control move of these tree elements. And here you see wiping on the shot with the snow composited in. We added snow to the windowsills, and then you see the element of the tree that we shot motion control. And it feels like it's in the shot because it has the same camera move on it. We also added the little butterfly at the end. So compositing supervisor Klaus Henke took all of the elements, the rendered 3D snow and the matte paintings by Shannon Berkeley of the rest of the building, and then the tree elements that I shot on stage, and then the production element that was shot on set, and combine them all together into this changing of the seasons shot. So here you see the Princeton sequence. It's shot in the dead of winter. I understand it was very, very cold. and the bare trees and a camera move. And here you see the painted leaves wiping on. And now notice as the camera moves that the leaves on the tree multiplane in 3 dimensions. That was achieved by breaking the painted elements into many layers and then compositing them in 3D.
It's not enough Hansen won the Carnegie Scholarship.
No, he has to have it all for himself.
Here we see the empty theater, and then the extras that we had and the cast in the foreground. Klaus created a loop of the foreground people clapping. You can see it's rather seamless, but it is looping. And that way he was able to take that as an element and scale it and place it all over the theater to create this shot. And then we put the light effects over the top of the people, and you see the final effect of a very packed theater. On some level, that's a great compliment when people aren't even aware of the effects. I think that's really the highest compliment because, you know, Beautiful Mind has quite a few effects which are rather apparent. There's a number of them that are invisible, but then there's quite a few that you really see. And even those are invisible because they serve the story. Visual effects, the primary challenge is visual storytelling. And so I found that when you're doing that, when you're really just telling the story, audiences aren't aware of effects, even if they're right there in your face.